I felt my stomach sink through the floor as Vincent's words landed. Time seemed to stretch as I watched his lips curl into that smirk I had come to loathe. We're restructuring commissions. Yours is now 1% instead of 10%. A wave of bile rose in my throat. The $5.2 million deal I had just closed, the largest in company history, would now net me $52,000 instead of $520,000. The difference was life-altering. I had already imagined that money, covering my mom's medical bills, finally replacing my 12-year-old car, making a down payment on a home after 10 years of renting. All vanished in an instant. My name is Meredith Harlow, married to the few people I truly trust, and I am 34 years old. Before I continue this story, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from, and subscribe if you want to hear more about what happens when corporate America pushes the wrong woman too far. I had been at Nexus Acquisitions for nearly 6 years. 6 years of early mornings and skipped birthdays. 6 years of canceling dates and therapy sessions to accommodate clients in different time zones. 6 years of proving myself in an industry where women were still seen as ornamental rather than driving forces. Nexus sold enterprise software solutions to major corporations, deals that take months, sometimes years to close, the kind where a 10% commission could change your life. I joined Nexus as an account manager after leaving a toxic startup where my boss claimed credit for my work while trying to sleep with me. The startup world was full of men pretending to be visionaries while treating women like furniture. Corporate seemed safer, more structured. I was wrong. At Nexus, I clawed my way from managing small accounts to becoming the top performer on our enterprise team. I worked harder than anyone, memorized industry specs other salespeople ignored, built real relationships with clients instead of treating them like walking dollar signs. When Selene Technologies appeared on our radar, everyone said they were untouchable. They were revolutionizing medical imaging with AI, and their CEO, Imani Okafor, was brilliant but notoriously hard to impress. Selene had chewed up and spat out sales teams from every competitor. "Don't waste your time," Vincent said. "Focus on clients we can actually land." But I saw something in Selene that others didn't. Their pain points weren't what everyone assumed. While other teams pitched cost-saving and efficiency, I spent weeks researching their real challenges: integration with legacy systems, and HIPAA compliance across international boundaries. For 3 months, I practically lived Selene. I spoke with their mid-level managers, their tech team, even befriended the administrative staff. I learned their frustrations, their visions for the company, and the barriers preventing global growth. When I finally met Imani, I didn't pitch. I presented solutions to problems she hadn't publicly shared. I watched her face shift from skeptical to curious to genuinely impressed. "You actually understand what we're trying to achieve," she said, leaning forward. "That's refreshing." It took another 4 months of meetings, demos, and contract negotiations. I worked 80-hour weeks, missed my brother's wedding, developed an ulcer that kept me awake at night, but I succeeded. Selene signed a 5-year contract worth $5.2 million, the largest deal in Nexus's history. The morning after the contract finalized, I floated into the office. People who'd never spoken to me were suddenly friendly. The CFO sent a company-wide email congratulating me. My commission, life-changing, debt-erasing, future-securing $520,000, would be paid when Celine's first payment cleared, roughly 4 weeks away. That was yesterday. Today, Vincent summoned me to his office. As always, he wore a crisp blue shirt that matched his eyes that claimed credit for others' work and lingered too long on junior staff at happy hours. "Mary, fantastic work with Selene." His voice dripped fake warmth. "Truly exceptional. The executive team is beyond impressed." I smiled, bracing for the inevitable but. With Vincent, there was always a but. "As you know, we're constantly evaluating our compensation structures to align with market standards and growth goals." He shuffled papers, avoiding my gaze. For deals over $5 million, we're implementing a new tiered commission structure. That's when he said it. Yours is now 1% instead of 10%. The room tilted. That's not in my contract, I managed to say, my voice sounding distant even to myself. I heard Vincent say, "It's a company-wide policy change, effective immediately." He finally looked up, his smile failing to reach his eyes. Think about it. $2,000 is still a substantial commission. Most people here would kill for that kind of bonus. I sat perfectly still, years of being socialized as a woman in America stopping me from flipping his desk or screaming in his face. Instead, I heard myself ask, was this planned before I closed Celine? Vincent cleared his throat. The executive team has been discussing it for some time. The timing is unfortunate, I know. Unfortunate, as if he had accidentally stepped on my toe rather than stolen nearly $500,000 from me. Congratulations again on the new client, he said, dismissing me with that smirk. We're lucky to have you on the team. I nodded, stood, and walked out without a word. My heels clicked against the hardwood floors as I returned to my desk, passing coworkers oblivious to the storm inside me. I sat, opened my laptop, and stared blankly at the screen. They thought I'd just accept it because that's what women like me do, right? Smile, nod, and say, "Thank you for the scraps." But here's what Vincent didn't know. I'd been planning my exit from Nexus for months. Selling enterprise software had taught me a vital lesson. The client relationship belongs to whoever nurtures it. Companies think they own the client, but clients follow the people they trust. And Amani Okafor trusted me. 3 months earlier, I had started laying the groundwork for my own consulting firm. Nothing violating my non-compete, just registering a business, designing a website, setting up bank accounts. I called it Prism Solutions, specializing in exactly the integration services companies like Celine needed. My plan had been to launch in 6 months, after saving enough from the Celine commission to cover startup costs and a year of runway. Now, sitting at my desk with rage burning through me, I knew I had to accelerate everything. I grabbed my phone and texted Amani. "Any chance you're free for coffee tomorrow? Need to discuss something important about your implementation." She replied within minutes. "Morning, 7:30 a.m., at Corvus, before my board meeting." I confirmed and reopened my laptop with purpose. I wasn't just angry, I was calculating. The Celine contract was signed, but implementation hadn't begun. The first payment wasn't due for 4 weeks. That night, I barely slept, reviewing my employment contract word by word. The non-compete was tricky, but not insurmountable. It prohibited soliciting Nexus clients for 12 months after leaving, but allowed for clients who approached me independently or with whom I had a pre-existing relationship outside Nexus. I also reviewed Celine's contract with Nexus. The language detailed deliverables and timelines, but didn't guarantee which individuals would provide the services. There was no assurance I would personally oversee their implementation. By morning, I had a plan. Imani was at Corvus when I arrived, impeccably dressed as always, typing furiously on her laptop. "This better be important," she said without looking up. "Board members flying in from Singapore in 2 hours." I sat, hands steady despite my racing heart. "Nexus is planning to assign a junior team to your implementation," I said. "I've been moved to a different division." A lie, but necessary. Her fingers froze above the keyboard. "That's not what we discussed," she said slowly, finally meeting my eyes. "I know. That's why I wanted to meet in person." I took a deep breath. "I'm leaving Nexus today." Her eyes narrowed. "And you're telling me this? Why? Expect me to intervene with management?" "No. I'm starting my own consulting firm, specializing in exactly what Celine needs." I handed her my freshly printed business card. "Your contract with Nexus has a 30-day cancellation clause with prorated fees. You haven't paid them anything yet." Imani studied the card. This is highly irregular, Mary. So is bait and switch staffing on a $5.2 million contract, I shot back. I held her gaze. You signed with Nexus because of me, because I took the time to understand what Celine actually needs. Do you think anyone else there has that knowledge? She exhaled, leaning back. What exactly are you proposing? Cancel with Nexus. Hire Prism. Hire me for 15% less than you agreed to pay them. You get the same service, save almost $800,000, and work directly with the person you trusted from the start. And I get what? Revenge. I smiled thinly. I get to build something of my own instead of making other people rich. And yes, I got the satisfaction of knowing Vincent Kaplan would have to explain to the executive team how he lost the biggest client in company history. Imani was quiet for a long moment, turning the business card over in her fingers. You know what I like about you, Mary? You're just as calculating as I am. She slipped the card into her jacket pocket. Send me a proposal by the end of the day. Make it irresistible to my board. I stood from Corvus Coffee that morning, heart pounding in my ears. For the first time in years, I felt something like power coursing through my veins. I wasn't just another woman swallowing her rage and carrying on. I was about to show Vincent exactly who he'd underestimated. I walked into Nexus at 9 a.m., sat at my desk, and typed my resignation letter. 2 sentences. Please accept this as formal notice of my resignation, effective immediately. I will not be requiring a reference. I emailed it to HR, CCing Vincent, then turned to drafting the proposal for Celine, my fingers flying with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. At 11:42 a.m., Vincent appeared at my desk, face flushed beneath his perfect haircut. What is this? He demanded, holding up his phone with my resignation email. I smiled up at him, the kind of smile I reserved for men who thought they were cleverer than they were. I believe it's self-explanatory. You can't just quit in the middle of onboarding our biggest client. Actually, I can, I replied, continuing to gather my few personal items into a small box. And regarding Celine, I'm sure whoever you assign will do their best. His eyes narrowed. This is about the commission change. I stood, box in hand. This is about knowing my worth, Vincent, something Nexus clearly struggles with. If you think you can take Celine with you, think again. The non-compete is practically unenforceable in this state, as I'm sure legal will tell you. But I'm not soliciting any Nexus clients. That would be unethical. Vincent followed me toward the exit, voice rising. You'll regret this, Mary. No one walks away from an opportunity like Nexus. I stopped at the elevator, turning to face him one last time. That's where you're wrong. I'm not walking away from opportunity. I'm walking toward it. The doors opened, and as I stepped inside, other employees watched, expressions ranging from shock to barely concealed admiration. I gave Vincent one last look. Congratulations on the new client, I said, echoing his words from yesterday as the doors closed. I walked out of Nexus headquarters with nothing but a cardboard box of desk plants and family photos, my laptop bag, and a fire in my chest that felt dangerously close to hope. 6 years of my life left behind in 20 minutes. By the time I reached my apartment, I'd received 3 texts from coworkers, not checking if I was okay, but fishing for gossip. Did you really quit? What happened with Vincent? Is it true you flipped him off in front of everyone? People love drama where there isn't any. The truth? That I'd maintained perfect composure while my insides churned with fear and rage wasn't exciting enough. I ignored them and got to work. My apartment became command central. Couch pushed against the wall, dining table turned into a desk stacked with notebooks, my laptop, and endless coffee cups. 4 weeks of savings to live on before things got desperate. 4 weeks to make this work. The Celine proposal took me 14 hours straight. I barely ate, barely left my chair, just wrote and rewrote until every word was perfect. I outlined a 3-phase implementation plan that would save them money while delivering better results than Nexus had promised. My hands shook as I hit send at 1:38 a.m. Sleep wouldn't come. I ran calculations in my head. If Celine signed at my proposed rate, I'd make more in 1 year than I would have from that commission, even the original 10%. But I'd have no safety net, no health insurance, no 401k, and one client, no matter how big, wasn't a sustainable business. My phone pinged at 6:15 a.m. Imani, board meeting in an hour. Your proposal is compelling. 2 questions, Imani texted. 1. How do we know you can deliver without Nexus resources? 2. What about our data security needs? I replied immediately. 1. Nexus outsources implementation anyway to contractors I've worked with for years. I've already spoken with 3 key specialists ready to join Prism. 2. I've partnered with Cybersecure for better protection than Nexus ever offered. Their CEO is meeting me for dinner tonight. Another calculated lie. I hadn't spoken to anyone yet, but I knew exactly who to call. Imani sent back one word. Impressive. 10 minutes later, she followed up, sending the contract to legal for review. Subject to their approval, we're moving forward with Prism. I sat on my kitchen floor and cried for the first time since this whole mess began. Not sad tears, not even happy ones. Relief tears, the kind that come when you've been holding your breath so long you forgot what oxygen feels like. Then I got back to work. By noon, I'd called Raj Patel, the best systems architect I knew, who'd been doing contract work for Nexus while dreaming of going independent. He said yes before I even finished explaining. Then came Zoe Chen, a security specialist underutilized and underpaid at Cybersecure for years. She negotiated hard but agreed to join as a partner rather than an employee, better for both of us at this stage. By evening, I had the beginnings of a real team. Brilliant people who, like me, had been overshadowed and undervalued, people with something to prove. What I didn't have yet was any word from Nexus. No angry calls from Vincent, no legal threats, just silence. That changed the next morning. My phone rang at 7:20 a.m. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should. Meredith Harlow? I kept my voice neutral. Miss Harlow, this is Eleanor Westbrook, General Counsel for Nexus Acquisitions. Her voice was exactly what you'd expect from a corporate attorney, measured, slightly bored, with an undercurrent of steel. I'm calling regarding some concerning information that's come to our attention. My heart rate doubled, but my voice stayed steady. And what information would that be, Miss Westbrook? We've been informed that Celine Technologies is considering terminating their contract with Nexus, apparently after communication with you. Given your non-compete agreement, this raises serious legal concerns. I took a slow breath. Expected. Prepared. Miss Westbrook, I understand your position, but I haven't violated my non-compete. I haven't solicited any Nexus clients. If Celine is reconsidering their relationship with Nexus, perhaps you should ask Vincent why. Her voice carried a hint of smugness now. A chill ran through me. Someone had seen us at Corvus. That meeting had been at Ms. Okafor's request to discuss implementation concerns. I lied smoothly. As for any business she might do with my new consulting firm, that falls under the pre-existing relationship exemption in Section 4.3 of my employment agreement. Technically true. I'd met Imani once at a Women in Tech conference 3 years before she joined Celine. We'd exchanged business cards. In legal terms, that counted as a pre-existing professional relationship. Silence. I had done my homework better than they expected. Finally, Eleanor continued. Nexus is prepared to take this matter to court if necessary. The timing is at minimum suspicious. I understand, I said calmly. And Nexus is certainly within its rights to pursue litigation. Just as I am within my rights to present to the court documentation showing how my commission was retroactively slashed after I landed the largest contract in company history, I'm sure that would make for interesting coverage in the industry press. Another long pause. Miss Harlow, perhaps there's a way to resolve this amicably. Would you be open to discussing terms? And there it was. They weren't scared of losing the legal battle. They had the resources. But they were terrified of the public relations nightmare. Tech companies already had reputation problems when it came to how they treated women. This would be gasoline on that fire. I'm always open to reasonable discussion, I said. My terms are simple. Nexus agrees not to pursue any legal action against me or my company, and I agree not to publicly discuss the circumstances of my departure. And Celine, I added, is free to work with whichever vendor they choose. That's not something either of us can control. I could practically hear her calculating the risks. Finally, I'll present this to the executive team. Expect to hear from me by the end of the day. 3 hours later, a courier delivered a settlement agreement releasing me from my non-compete in exchange for my silence about the commission structure. I signed immediately. By the end of the week, Celine had officially terminated their contract with Nexus and signed with Prism Solutions. The first payment, $780,000 with the 15% discount I promised, hit my business account the following Monday. I thought I'd feel vindicated. Instead, I felt terrified. Now I actually had to deliver. The next 3 months were the hardest of my life. I worked around the clock building Prism while implementing Celine's systems. Raj, Zoe, and I operated out of my apartment until we could afford office space. I developed migraines from stress, lost 7 pounds I couldn't afford to lose, and forgot to call my mom on her birthday because I was troubleshooting code at 2 a.m. But slowly, miraculously, it started working. Celine's implementation went smoother than anyone expected. Imani, never one to give praise easily, told me our team accomplished in 3 months what would have taken Nexus 6. Because we were smaller and more focused, we could adapt quickly to their changing needs. Word spread. When you deliver for a company like Celine, other companies notice. 4 months after leaving Nexus, we landed our second client. 5 months after, our third and fourth. By 6 months, we had 7 clients, a real office with 5 full-time employees, and a network of specialists we brought in as needed. I finally started sleeping more than 4 hours a night. I hadn't heard anything about Vincent or Nexus until Madison, my former cubicle neighbor, asked me to meet for drinks. We met at a quiet downtown bar. Madison looked the same, but I barely recognized myself in the restroom mirror. More confident posture, expensive blouse instead of clearance rack finds, hair finally professionally cut after months of neglect. "So," Madison said after we ordered, "you probably haven't heard." "Heard what?" "Vincent got fired last week." I nearly choked on my drink. "What? Why?" Madison leaned in, clearly enjoying the drama. "After you left with Celine, he promised the executive team he'd replace that revenue within 6 months. Kept telling everyone he had big deals in the pipeline. Meanwhile, 3 more enterprise clients followed you out the door." I shook my head. "I didn't poach those clients." "No," she said, "but their contracts were up for renewal, and they'd worked with you before. They didn't even consider renewing with Nexus." She sipped her wine. "Anyway, the 6-month mark came, and Vincent had nothing. Word is they're down almost $8 million in projected annual revenue." I sat back, processing this. I'd been so focused on building Prism that I hadn't thought about the impact on Nexus. "How's morale?" "Terrible. They slashed the commission structure for everyone, not just you. 4 more salespeople quit. Oh, and they tried to recruit me to take over your accounts." She grinned. "I told them I was joining Prism instead." My eyes widened. "You what? If the offer still stands? Your LinkedIn post said you were hiring account managers." I laughed. genuine, belly-deep laughter that felt foreign after months of stress. The offer definitely stands. As we clinked glasses to seal the deal, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I knew I was probably the last person he wanted to hear from. It was Vincent. "Can we talk? I've got a business proposition." I showed Madison. Her eyes went wide. "Are you going to respond?" I thought about it for a long moment. About all the nights I'd lain awake imagining clever, cutting things I wished I'd said. About the satisfaction I'd imagined feeling at his downfall. But looking at his text now, I felt nothing. Not anger, not vindication, just emptiness, like staring at an old scar that no longer hurts. I put my phone away without responding. Not worth my time. 2 weeks later, I received a LinkedIn message from Vincent. "Mary, I've started my own consulting firm and would value your advice. Maybe we could partner on some projects. Let's put the past behind us." I almost laughed out loud. The audacity of men will never cease to amaze me. After everything, he genuinely thought I might help him. I wrote back a single line. "I don't think our commission structures would be compatible." Then I blocked him. 1 year to the day after I walked out of Nexus, Prism Solutions moved into our new offices. The entire 10th floor of a downtown building, floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the river. We had 28 employees, 17 clients, and had just closed our first $10 million contract. That evening, after everyone had gone home, I sat alone in my corner office, looking out at the city lights. My phone pinged with a text from Imani. "Heard about the Meridian contract. Impressive. You should be proud." I wrote back, "I'm learning from the best." She responded with a rare emoji, a simple thumbs up that, coming from her, felt like a standing ovation. I leaned back in my chair, a chair I'd picked out myself for my company, and finally let myself feel it all: the fear, the exhaustion, the wild, improbable triumph. What happened with Nexus wasn't really about the money. It was about being seen, valued, recognized for what I'd built, rather than having it taken from me. In trying to save themselves a few $100,000, they'd lost millions and launched their biggest competition. The irony wasn't lost on me. That night, as I left the office, I passed the wall where we'd hung our company values. The first one read, "Fair compensation reflects real value." Below it was our commission structure, transparent, equitable, and set in stone. Vincent's parting gift to me, it turned out, wasn't just freedom from Nexus. It was clarity about the kind of leader I wanted to be. The kind who remembers what it feels like to be undervalued. The kind who builds others up rather than standing on their backs. The kind who knows true success isn't measured by how much you take, but by how much you create. Looking back now, I sometimes wonder if I should thank him. In trying to minimize me, he accidentally set me free. But I think I'll save that thank you note for another lifetime. Have you ever had a moment where someone underestimated you, and it became your greatest motivation? Or have you ever walked away from something secure to build something that truly reflected your values? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if you've ever found yourself in a situation where you're not being valued, at work, in a relationship, or anywhere else, remember this: sometimes the greatest act of self-respect is simply walking away and building something better. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to hear more and share it with someone who might need a reminder of their own worth today. Because the best revenge isn't just success, it's creating success on your own terms.